it 7? Are we good? Okay. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and call our board business meeting to order. It is now 7 o'clock. And before we move forward, I did want to just remind people of where the fire exits are. So if you look to the back here, the back there, and then if we can't get out those doors, there is also an exit behind me to the left. So didn't want to forget to remind folks. I am going to hand it over to Superintendent Provenzano before I approve the agenda and we move forward, just to mention a few things.
Thank you very much, Erica. I truly believe that we're always living in the context of a greater circumstance, and I just want to take a moment to talk about and ask people to reflect upon. The terrorist attack on Israel has affected many of our Fairport families who have deep connections to that nation, and in particular that region. Also, the subsequent violence in Gaza has also cut into the fabric of our community as well, as we are home to Palestinian families as well. Can we just take a moment to reflect on the world circumstances? Our responsibility and privilege in the district is to serve every child and every family, and to create and maintain safe and welcoming spaces for every student who walks through our doors. In the moments of crisis and division, and in moments that our Fairport families are in pain, the duty of our district is to protect and support students the best way that we can. Our student safety and well-being is our number one priority, always has been. We have an extraordinary mental health team and community partners, and we are always working to provide more resources for our families to refer to and use during a crisis such as this. We will continue to work so that members of our Fairport community of all backgrounds and faiths feel safe, seen, and respected in our schools. If families feel their students have been bullied or harmed at school in any way, please do not hesitate to reach out to your building principal immediately so we can address any issues that violate our code of conduct. And thank you for taking that moment with me. I know it's important to everyone in here.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. So I need a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting. Brian? Second. Mary Caitlin? All in favor? Aye. I did want to comment that, yes, we are down to board members this evening for a variety of reasons. So it will be the 5 of us this evening. And I believe that our co-board folks are watching when they can from their different locations. So before we came in here, we actually had the opportunity to celebrate with our newly tenured teachers and our new teachers. So next up is just special recognition for the 2023-24 tenure class and new probationary teachers.
I think you said it best. We were able to celebrate our educators who impact our students. Behind every great experience, there's an amazing Fairport educator. We had 37 new educators and administrators come to Fairport this past fall. We had 18 newly tenured faculty who've had to go through a process for the past 3 or 4 years, depending on where they were in their professional endeavors. But these are the adults who are part of our great community. These are the adults that are part of the clubs, the interscholastic activities, the theater programs, the magic that occurs in the classroom. The connections that they create make a difference, and we just thought it was appropriate to celebrate and recognize them. We appreciate Doug Luff and his office, who have spent a lot of time preparing for the event and trying to make it special. It was great to see so many families, great to see their children, their moms and dads, and friends who came out to recognize the great accomplishment. But it's worthy to recognize, we see so many great things happening in our district, and it's about people. And that's what 6 o'clock was. So thank you, board, for giving us the opportunity to acknowledge that. Thank you, Doug, for taking the time to create that moment.
Okay, so next up, we do have public comments. I am just gonna do a few reminders. We have not had 10 people come to public comment in quite some time. So just a reminder that we do have a 3-minute limit. I know when people sign up, they get that information. So just a reminder here. Also, wanted to remind folks that what you're saying or directing at us, keep it kind. Please don't address specific people within our school district, like teachers or administrators or students by name. And a reminder, we are live streaming as well because I know that is a switch, but we did want to do that moving forward for both our workshops, if you joined us earlier today, and for the public comment session. So one more reminder, just if you do have things that you want to give to the board, instead of handing it out individually to each of us, if you could please give it to the kind gentleman over there.
Right over here.
Oh, there, wherever you are, wave, so that we don't take time away from people's opportunity to speak. So, and a reminder that if you perhaps did not get on the list to do public comment tonight, it's an ongoing list and you would just roll over into November. So a reminder with that. Yes, please. Okay, so first up we have Dave Levine, located at 26 Vanderburg Drive. And we'll wait until you come up to start the timer. Yep, go ahead. For anybody that's going to be doing public comment. And you pressed it? You can, we gotcha.
Very good. The Board of Education and the superintendent were served an intent to file notification for obscene and pornographic materials in our district libraries back in March. Contained within this notice was a request to pull obscene materials and create a public moratorium inclusive of the signatories to the notice. The board and the superintendent were given 5 days to agree to such before a claim would be filed against their bonds. The board nor the superintendent answered with an agreement to sit and partner with parents, grandparents, and taxpayers at a table of compromise. These are people who claim to be stewards of the community and over your tax dollars. Rather, they answered by hiring a law firm to threaten and bully 60 signatories to a complaint. For the diversity, equity, and inclusion mind guards, this is the epitome of hypocrisy in equity and inclusion. They formed secret book committees and by secret ballots voted to keep every book that was challenged. To this day, they refuse to identify who sat on those committees. These people work for us and they are defiant in accountability. People have asked, how is this possible? Well, they can do this because they get a get out of jail free card. All these materials meet the thresholds of what defines obscenity and dissemination to minors. The district has an affirmative defense to obscenity. However, I ask you, does it make it right? Does it make it ethical? Does it make it moral? Our librarians, principals, the superintendent, and the Board of Education allow these materials, and they are exempt for educational purposes. In New York, the harmful to minor statutes in the penal code are invalidated for educational or scientific institutions. As for the federal regulations, the case of Fields versus Palmdale precedent states that parents have no constitutional right to prevent a public school from providing students whatever information it wishes to provide, sexual or otherwise, when the school determines that it's appropriate. Simply put, fire the board by voting them out, and the superintendent will sing a new song. I would like to ask the board and the superintendent for all to hear. Please tell me what you find educational in providing students with sex app instructions that mark their location and where to find the closest homosexual. Tell me where the educational value is in books that normalize sex between students and teachers. tell me the educational value and QR codes
Dave, you're at
that
30
take
seconds.
adolescents to sites for the best first-time anal sex tips, the best oral sex tips, and next-level blowjobs. Would you like to respond? This board and the superintendent are at war with parents on this relentless coercion of perversity.
Okay, and next up, we have Kelly Cocho. I am just going to make the comment that when we have public comment, it is for the board to hear folks. It isn't a time where we respond to questions. So it's standard. That's how it always is. And
That's what we want to know. When are you going to respond to it?
are you ready?
Answer that question.
Kelly, are you ready?
I am going to start tonight by sharing my thoughts on the recent thought exchange. These are a few quotes from the last board meeting. Statements targeted students with harmful misinformation and bigotry. Fairport works in partnership with families in order to best serve not only their students, but to serve each and every single student in this district. Closing the survey was not an attempt to censor. I'll start with not attempting to censor. A few of the themes that were highlighted at the meeting were safety and security, strong academics, communication with families, study skills, time management, and social emotional skills. But many themes in the top 25 weren't touched, including the parental right to know what's happening with their child, keeping the sexual predators out of Fairport schools, keeping penises out of girls' bathrooms and locker rooms, over-sexualizing our kids, and keeping politics and social justice out of the classroom. That is 100% censorship as I know it. Why do myself and others keep getting called bigots because we want to keep penis out of a girl's safe space? Because we want to keep politics and social justice out of middle school, risking their safety and health? Why are we conforming to the feelings of a few? What about my kids' feelings or the majority of kids' feelings? So if you're serving all students, how are you serving mine? Board Policy 7554, titled Student Gender Identity, states the district will allow a transgender or GNC student to use the restroom and locker room that corresponds to the student's consistently expressed gender identity at school. What is gender nonconforming and gender fluid? How are those identities consistent? Can they change their restrooms daily? I am not targeting any groups. I'm targeting the filth in our library. I don't ask to ban books. I'm simply asking for the books to be age appropriate and school appropriate. There's a population of people who believe this trans movement has gone too far, myself included. There's real life books about the negatives of trying to change your sex. However, even though Board Policy 8331 states that controversial issues will balance major views and provide as many sides of the issue as possible in a fair manner with no one position presented as the only one acceptable, I can't find a single book in the district's libraries about detransing, but a search of transgender brings up 495 titles. Where's the balance? This leads me into a push for mental health at the schools. The first thing I noticed on locker day at JP was the new mural. It's okay to not be okay. You are not alone. This to me is encouraging a victim mentality and mental health issues. When my daughter was a 6th grader, she asked for a mental health day, something she learned about at school. My daughter once asked me, Mom,
Kelly,
how
you have
does
30
the trans
seconds.
thing affect you? This was my response. Do you remember in 5th grade, you wrote me a note telling me you are bisexual and it's not a phase, followed 6 months later by asking for a chest binder, and shortly after that, going by they, them for a couple of weeks, but couldn't even define non-binary to me? Fast forward to today, where you're very proud to be a heterosexual young woman who admits to being confused. This is what's not okay. Fairport School District is contributing to the mental health problems of our
Kelly,
youth under the guise
time
of being
is
there to
up.
help. Stop pushing pronouns on our kids and pushing this absurd agenda on them.
And next we have Michael Naporowski from 7 Brimfield Circle.
Ready? Are you ready? Sure. I think the light's on. Good. I stand before you today as a concerned father, husband, taxpayer, and member of the community. I've watched the district transform over the past 10 years into something very troubling. As a father of 3 teenage boys, I chose to remove each of them after elementary school and move them to McQuaid. At the time, it was a choice driven by what I believed was simply a better academic opportunity. Today, as I look at the current state of the district, I want to take a moment and thank the board for affirming my decision. My boys have been shielded from the ideological changes that have taken place within Fairport schools, and for that, I am grateful. They have been able to focus on their education without being subjected to all the political nonsense here in Fairport. I know that my concerns will fall on deaf ears because you are all progressive, left-wing, political ideologues who aren't interested in preserving traditional family values. You're beholden to the teachers' unions, Democrat Party leaders, bureaucrats in Albany, and local political activist crowd. But I feel it's important to speak out because I know I represent the silent majority here in Fairport. 20 years ago, Fairport was one of the most respected school districts in the area, but today, it's pretty average. Fairport's no longer a top destination for young families, enrollment is declining, and a contributing factor that an increasing number of Fairport kids are choosing homeschooling and private schools, including many members of the Fairport faculty. Ask yourself, why would Fairport teachers not want their own kids in Fairport schools? It's obvious. They see what's happening firsthand, and they don't want their kids to be part of it. I've watched a recent board workshop where you all spent a half hour debating on how best to describe just how dedicated you all are to being how inclusive. Give me a break. People wonder why test scores are dropping, literacy rates are falling, behavior problems are the worst they've ever been, and why so many teachers are retiring and leaving. And don't blame COVID. These trends started long before then. You have lost sight of your core mission. You're supposed to provide solid academic foundation. Instead, you focus on DEI. For me, I'm glad my kids don't have to deal with this. As a taxpayer, I'm angry that you choose to squander my tax dollars, waste kids' time, and create division within the community. As a father, I believe it's essential that our young men grow up with a strong sense of ethics, integrity,
Mike, you have 30 seconds.
respect for others, faith, and honor. These values have been the bedrock of our society for centuries, and they've allowed America to grow into a great nation. Unfortunately, you have veered way off the path. Your excessive focus on DEI and social justice have overshadowed the importance of these timeless values. The victimhood mentality that these topics perpetuate benefit no one. Instead, it divides us and weakens the fabric of our society. In closing, I know you don't care what I say, but I'll say it anyway. Just stop with the woke nonsense and get back to basics.
Okay, next we have Tiffany Porter at Blackwatch Trail.
Superintendent, Assistant Super. Good afternoon, Superintendent, Assistant Superintendents, fellow board members, and community members. Let's just cut right to the chase. Across our district, county, and country, there's been a glaring assault on public education fueled by some parents and community members. No sugarcoating this, it's hate speech. Specifically, it targets LGBTQ students with an alarming focus on trans girls, a point I'll delve into shortly. We've heard the rhetoric before. Certain books supposedly indoctrinate our students. DEI is okay, but only if you omit parts that challenge the comfort of heterosexual students. Let's be clear. The majority of students don't fixate on their classmates' existence until implicit biases are pointed out by their parents. Public education should ensure every student feels included and safe, but that's impossible when some loud and misguided community members try to impose their religious beliefs and morals on our children. It's absurd that pronouns, something a 5-year-old can grasp, proves challenging for some adults. Instead of banning books, perhaps these parents and community members can pick up a book and educate themselves. Instead of fixating on discomfort, maybe the community members could venture into the towns and talk to people who they don't understand. We're supposed to be a land of the free, yet every school board meeting I attend is an attempt to snatch freedom from students. If these folks knew their history, they recognize their hate speech aligns with fascism. Banning books and imposing personal beliefs mirrors supporting segregation, genocide, and other forms of discrimination. Last week, I found myself in yet another school board meeting where parents and students discussed the presence of trans girls in girls' locker room. Shockingly, a parent claimed that there was elusive data suggesting trans girls commit sexual assault in these locker rooms. And in their words, biological girls were the victims. Not only did I find zero evidence to support this claim, but the truth what I uncovered was the exact opposite. Trans and non-binary students are the ones more vulnerable, especially in communities hyper-focused on their identity, subjecting them to the risk of sexual assault in locker rooms and bathrooms. So community members and parents, instead of fixating on trans girls and LGBTQ students, redirect your focus to places where it can genuinely make positive impact, like providing comprehensive sexual education in schools or addressing the drug problem amongst our youth. As an alumni of Fairport School District, I openly discussed my struggle with suicidal ideation as a queer young Black woman. I didn't see myself in this community, and I vowed to fight for those like me who felt like they didn't belong. Queer, non-binary individuals suffer mentally, not because we're uncomfortable in our own skin, but because society refuses to welcome and include us. They are hell-bent on denying our existence. So parents, remember that these are children you're attacking with your bigotry and biases. The long-term harm you impose on their lives goes beyond your immediate concern. So redirect and focus on creating a community that welcomes and includes all its members and recognizes the value each person brings. Thank you.
Next, we have Stephanie, I'm going to say it wrong, Palchik. And Stephanie is at 76 Grandview Drive.
Good evening, thank you. I have watched for years now how anti-public education groups have shifted gears in lockstep, moving from protesting masks to challenging what they define as pornography in our school libraries, to fighting against affirming transgender students' identities and allowing them to live their lives according to their wishes while they're at school. I witnessed them calling board members groomers and sexualizers of children. They believe that teachers are spending a greater portion of their day teaching the finer points of political activism than they are fractions. Not one of these concerned parents and community members has spent any meaningful time in our schools. They rely on pure conjecture, out of context portions of books and lessons, and even surreptitious photographs of wall displays in the schools to choose their next attacks. I am the daughter, the granddaughter, and the great-granddaughter of teachers, and I stand here today as someone who didn't give a moment's thought to going into education because I knew I didn't have the chops for it. I know intimately how hard it is in the best of times for teachers to do what they do and can't fathom how they must feel to be labeled indoctrinators and be suspected of grooming kids on a daily basis. A national anti-public education organization and a local group of anonymous individuals are now working together to attempt to change the makeup of this school board to one which will freely remove challenged books from our libraries, require lesson plans to be posted online for inspection at all times, and end the vitally important social emotional learning framework that is helping our children understand their feelings, their friendships, and their own innate abilities. Any student of history could tell you that a similar fight in public schools, especially in the South, happened in the 1950s and 60s. It was the impetus for an explosion of private schools to which white students fled when faced with forced integration. To the groups here tonight who believe the changing social landscape in the United States should not also be reflected in the lessons taught in our public schools, let me remind you that your parental right to send your child to a private, parochial, or home school of your choice that is in line with your personal values and eliminates uncomfortable history and queer students is not being threatened. But my parental right to give my child a holistic, inclusive, socially and historically aware and emotionally supportive education is. I am a part of the majority in this town who wholeheartedly support our
30
LGBTQ
seconds.
students, our amazing teachers, and our Board of Education. Thank you.
And next we have Shannon Bonas at 130 West Ave.
So first and foremost, I'd like to correct one of the last speakers who said that there's no evidence of sexual assault in locker rooms or bathrooms in Loudoun County, Virginia. Scott Smith, his daughter was raped in a high school bathroom by a transgender boy wearing a skirt, and there's now a $20 million lawsuit against the school district for covering it up. So the notion that it is dangerous for girls to be in private spaces, safe spaces with any biological boy is absurd. I think most mothers want their girls safe, and so that's just simply false. There have also been many other instances of sexual assault and rape happening in girls' locker rooms and bathrooms across the country. So in the spring of 2023, we brought to your attention books. There's another speaker that said that there's no grooming happening. Some of the books that we brought to your attention in the spring of 2023, Boy Toy normalizes sex between adults and children, between teachers and children. That's the very definition of grooming. Normalizing inappropriate sexual context takes it, normalizes it to children and makes them unaware of when inappropriate advances are being made by adults. So the nature of most of the books, we brought dozens and dozens of books. This book is gay, teaches children how to upload pictures of themselves to sex apps and meet up for people sharing their location for sex. So you guys are presenting this information to children on a daily basis. I thought when you would be made aware of this, you guys would be appalled and you would want to keep children safe. But instead, you guys lawyered up, threatened parents. These books contain graphic pictures of anal sex, oral sex, heterosexual sex. It is the definition of child pornography. And rather than meeting with us and discussing this and discussing what is appropriate in a school library or an elementary school library, you guys continue to suppress speech. And this is why our organization, Fairport Educational Alliance, now has a mailing list of almost 2,000 parents in Fairport and growing. This is why we have thousands of people who are reaching out to us, because you guys continue to ignore parents, you continue to put children in danger. This isn't about a safe space for LGBTQ kids. We think every kid deserves a safe space. This is about a safe space for all children where they are not sexualized and sexually groomed by adults on a regular basis. We have one parent, a self-identified liberal Democrat, who had to take her child out of Fairport schools because her elementary school child came home and said that the teachers were encouraging them to transition. When the parent contacted the school informed them that they would go ahead and continue to transition that child or encourage them to transition despite what the parents said. So these are the stories that we get on a regular basis. We also know from Brett Provenzano and his communication to one of our parents
your time is up.
that the school is completely in support of the policy
Shannon.
that transitions kids in schools without parental knowledge.
So now
So
we have Dennis.
we need to get better on all of this, and I can assure you we're going to continue to work to that.
Dennis. So next we have Dennis Bear at 7 Wheatfield Circle. Dennis is not here? Okay. We'll move down the list. Russell Snyder at 757 Furman Road. Are you here? Okay. So next we have Sarah Nazarian at 131 West Ave.
Good evening. It's nice to be here in October with a new school year in full swing and fall weather finally here, but I'm especially happy to be here in October, which houses both Banned Book Week and National Bullying Prevention Month. Tomorrow is Bullying Prevention Day, Anti-Bullying Prevention Day of Unity. These two annual events speak to much of what you do as a school board and what we need more of in schools, encouraging literacy, opening minds to grow and ask questions, and keeping all students safe from physical and emotional harm. This week is also New York State School Board Appreciation Week. So by that token, I'm here to thank you for standing up against forces that are trying to ban books. According to the American Library Association, 90% of Americans do not approve of banning books. And National Banned Book Week data going back to 1982 further enforces that point. While there are groups calling for removal of books from libraries across the nation, Fairport Schools continues to stand up against the fringe extremist movements, and for that, your community is grateful. Thank you also for standing up for diversity, equity, inclusion, and in particular, our LGBTQ community. Promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in New York State schools is a state mandate. Protecting student privacy, including identity privacy, is also a state mandate. Those opposed to these state mandates who find themselves shouting at school board meetings are wasting everyone's time. Instead, they should travel to Albany, where mandates are approved and handed down to local districts. But they like to hear themselves shout rather than working for authentic progress or change. Despite nearly constant white noise in that respect, Fairport Schools and you as a board have continued to uphold the state mandates and do what is right for Fairport kids. Radical groups calling for book banning and the outward discrimination against LGBTQ youth are tiny factions that do not represent the views of the majority, contrary to what they may think, either here or across the nation. In October, when we call awareness to the dangers of banned books and work to prevent bullying and celebrate school boards across the nation, it's heartening to know that we live in a district that recognizes the anti-school rhetoric is just the small minority voice. So, in light of those things, Banned Book Week, Bullying Prevention Month, and School Board Appreciation Week, thank you for continuing to fight for what's truly important.
And next we have Kevin Glover, who is at 9 Oak Hill Terrace.
I'd like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. First, I'd like to thank the teachers, staff, maintenance, and food service, administrators, and others for providing an excellent education for our Fairport students. Thank you also to our parents, grandparents, and care providers for supporting the students in pursuing their education here in Fairport. The children are our future. It was very gratifying to see the results of the last election regarding Propositions 1 and 2. It's nice to know that most of the voting population believe that maintaining and improving our schools and sporting facilities are worth our joint investment. Now, I've been hearing about various groups appearing before local school boards requesting that certain books be banned from school curricula and libraries due to their containing objectionable material. There is an argument to be made, in my opinion, that certain books may be inappropriate for children at different times during their development. There are procedures in place to challenge books. School boards don't pick the books in the library or in the various curricula in my remembrance, nor should they. I am not a proponent of banning books. However, I did bring a book that many of you may find objectionable based upon some of its content. This book contains stories of incest, domestic violence, murder, genocide, rape, betrayal, descriptions of sexual acts, and other truly ugly happenings. It is a disturbing book on many levels. I'm not calling for its banning. Other people have a right to read what's written in this book and make their own judgments about exposing their children to it. It is foundational literature for a few of the world's major religions. It's the Bible. Agree with it or not? Accept it or not? Read it or not? Thanks again for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, I did want to just circle back. I thought I saw a few new people walk in, and I just wanted to make sure that Dennis is Dennis here? Okay, and Russell. Okay, then we will move on. So we moved our presentations up a little bit today just so people that are here can hear from the folks that are here to present. So first up, we actually have information on our financial audit.
Yep. Tonight we have Tom Zuber from MMB and Company here to present the 2022-23 year-end audit.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me here tonight and getting me on fairly quickly. So I really appreciate that. So you do have in your board packets the 2023 basic financial statements and internal control communication. And can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you, yes.
2023 basic financial statements and internal control communication. And you know, these financial statements, they're really the results of a budget process that started almost 2 years ago. And as you know, there's been a lot of different events that have happened over those past 2 years, including the finishing up of the pandemic, a significant amount of federal stimulus dollars, which are really one-shot type dollars that are allocated to school districts. And so there's a lot of unique items that took place over that period of time. You know, and school districts continue to face different challenges out there as it relates to your financial condition, you know, specifically state aid uncertainties. Certainly their property tax cap creates certain challenges for school districts, employee benefit challenges, as well as inflation, and even how to manage those federal stimulus funds. And so we did meet with the audit committee last week, and we spent probably about 40 minutes reviewing the 60-page document. And really talked about a lot of different information. We talked about year-over-year variances. We talked about fund balances and reserves, as well as internal controls and checks and balances. So it was a very good discussion. I'm pleased to report the district continues to be in very good financial condition. Some of the areas that we look at when we're looking at that financial condition really is the reserves and the fund balance and how the district is utilizing and managing those reserves and long-term planning as it relates to your long-term planning. And again, the district has done a good job with that. You know, some of the key reserves that you have out there, the employee benefit or the employee retirement system reserve, the teacher's retirement contribution reserve. So again, two reserves that are very specific to support expenditures relating to those two pension systems. So again, very positive. They're there to really help offset any significant spikes in those rates. So very, very beneficial reserves that you have out there. You have about $13 million in those reserves. Some of the other reserves, you have the capital reserve. Again, you have several different capital reserves. Again, extremely beneficial capital reserves. As you know, those are the most restrictive reserves out there because the voters actually vote to create the reserves along with certain caps on those reserves. So how much you can fund into those reserves, right? The board funds those reserves. And then again, the voters vote to utilize those reserves. And as you know, congratulations, you just had a vote that you approved the use of about $20 million from those capital reserves. So again, those reserves are very beneficial because they really reduce the local impact to the taxpayer when it comes to those capital projects. So again, very beneficial, and it really shows the long-term planning that the district does, which is really important when it comes to the financial condition of the school district. So again, very, very positive in long-term planning. The district also had about $4.5 million in federal stimulus money that you received. And as you know, those dollars, they're starting to come to an end. You know, the first round ended last year, the second round's ending right now. And then you have the last round that'll end at the end of next year. And as you know, there's certain expenditures in those federal grants that'll need to come back into the general fund, okay? And then there's other expenditures that are part of those programs that the district will have to make some decisions on, okay? So whether or not the programs are beneficial and how to reallocate those resources. So again, some of the challenges relating to the stimulus funds. But again, overall, the district continues to be in very good financial condition, okay? The other document you had is the internal control communication. So again, I'm pleased to report no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So that's really what you're looking for in the financial statements, in the audit report. There were a couple minor procedural items that we talked about in the internal control communication. Again, very minor. And again, the district will put forth a corrective action and which will respond to some of those items. So again, very positive in a lot of the financial statements. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? in
I
the
was just going
document?
to point
Sure.
out, you're explaining things lovely. If you are home or when you go home, this information is on board docs. So when you're referring to different reports, folks it is in the public section. So more specifically, if folks have questions, you can look there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any other questions?
And Matt, maybe you could answer this. So the school lunch fund, that was a point of note. Do we have a plan to address that in terms of spending down? Because I know it went up a bit.
Yeah, we worked through some spend down the current year. If you remember, we did some work over in Northside Dudley in terms of freshening up the cafeteria kitchen area. So that's one piece there of work we've done with spend down. And naturally, right as we got back into the first year in 2022-23 of paid meals off of the federal program that was no longer offered to school districts, we're starting to see that level out a little bit more in terms of the expenses with the revenues and the aid that we get for the federal and state reimbursement. So, yep. And again, we'll continue working. Like if the state provides us an update to work through any spend down requirements there for the fund balance, then we will continue through that process for food service. But essentially the program is self-sustaining. With the money we get from the federal and the state, and then the sale of meals, those really continue to help fund the costs of that program. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
I'd like to just quickly thank Tom and his team. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate everything.
Okay, so our other presentation.
Brian, you're going at it alone, huh?
The role of Kevin tonight.
Ah.
So bear with me as I go
Brian
through
from
this.
campus. Thank you.
Yep.
Kevin has much better eyesight than me, so.
Do you want my glasses? Or?
It's far away. That's
Clicker and glasses. We saw that.
All right, so the capital improvement project update for September. So budget summary slide, again, total referendum and associated contracts. Moving into construction contingency, we really are winding down. We're 94% complete. We're tracking $177,000 in remaining contingency. Above and beyond that, we have $77,000 in additional allowances, and we're currently tracking $161,000 in pending issues. So really a great financial place to be in for the project right now. These next two slides are just an overview. So with 1A and 1B, we are really winding down. October is going to be base contract. We're basically wrapping up punch list, final commissioning, and then transition into November and December with O&Ms, closeouts, and final cost reports. It skipped 1B for some reason, but it is the same overview. High school finishes update. This is going to continue into spring and summer of 2024. We are going to continue that work on B shift and utilize breaks in order to get that work done. 1B update. Again, this is anticipated finish date. We are into October for that base contract work, and then transitioning into punch list. Smart Schools update, phase 2. We're in great shape for phase 2. We're about 90% complete. They're just wrapping up some exterior cameras, and we should be complete this month. So project specific stuff, we have some photos that are coming up afterwards. So in the gymnasium, big scope of work to complete. It's open, looks great. We just turned it over on Monday. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
Yay.
West of that, west of the cafeteria, we're currently grinding terrazzo. That's in its final stages, and I know James has promised Bob next week. I know he said Monday, I said next week. No. The high school finishes project, again, it's going to be B shift and district breaks. And lastly, phase 1B, again, the major work for base bid to complete is the offices and the boiler rooms, punch list, and commissioning. We have some tile left over to do at Dudley, now that the terrazzo, you'll see a picture of that coming up. And lastly, JP Tech area. They just put the final coat on the epoxy today. So we'll be moving into casework and moving the rest of the equipment in to transfer that over to the district shortly. So without further ado, here's some pictures. This is actually the master of blue tape. This is what they outlined before they put the paint on. Here it is. That's the Fairport F, the first portion of the template. And again, template for Coach Fitch Court. Here it is, the gym completed.
Yay.
And here's a close-up of Coach Fitch Court. And here we are. This is the high school terrazzo that we just talked about. That's sometime next week, Bob. We're in grinding. And here it is again down the ramp. Dudley corridor terrazzo. I'd like to give a shout out to Aaron's team. They really made this happen over a break. When we had a conference day on Friday and students were out on Monday, we were able to get it ground down, and down there at the lower area where you see the base is where the leftover tile needs to be completed. More Dudley. And the time lapse.
We
How
love
do you
good
play
time
on the
lapse.
Is it?
Is it? But it just works nicely.
You can actually watch them putting the last 3 coats of clear on. There's one. There comes the second one. And there's the last. So you got 3 coats of poly right over the top, in addition to the other 2 base coats. So, any questions?
Yeah. First of all, that's amazing. It looks so great. Just to double, you kind of mentioned this at the beginning, but the percentage of the work that's complete, the contingency budget, I think it's like 95% of the budget is spent 94. We're comfortable
94,
with
yep.
that percentage and that amount.
Yes,
left in
we are
contingency?
comfortable. We are working with Matt Stevens. We're going to wrap up our change orders in October into the beginning of November in preparation to get cost reports so we can get those submitted to the state before the end of the year.
Perfect. Thank you.
You got it?
In the very near future, we'll be talking about how those funds will be allocated and used as we move through the process. So
Yeah.
that's right. Tomorrow, I was gonna check your calendar.
Where do you guys want this?
Just a quick thing. I think sometimes people are asked, like, why do these projects take so long? And there's many, many reasons. First of all, New York State. But I think people sometimes forget, like, we are a living facility, that you are having to go in and do this construction and the evenings, B shifts on 3-day weekends on the summer. Certain work can't be done in the winter, certain work can only be done during the summer. So, you're trying to get into every little nook and cranny when it's
Here's a
available.
trick
So-
question.
We just passed our vote, and we're going to have the same conversation 4 years from now as we're wrapping up the 2027.
How many
I was
people
trying to
do
set that
terrazzo?
stage, that It is a process. So.
How many people do terrazzo in New York State? Right.
There's one. And we're fighting. Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so next up, we are on communications, and Yay. Our school student advisor is here. I know soccer is still going on, but Claire Valentine is our person for this year. If you win and keep going in sectionals, will we miss you next month possibly? No. It should be over? Okay.
So hi everyone. Before I begin the student update, I'd like to give you all some background. Hold it. Okay. Before I begin the student update, I'd like to give you all some background on myself. My name's Clara. I'm a senior this year, and I love to be involved in the school. Last year, I served as the student representative to the faculty of the high school, and this year I get to continue that job as well as be your guys' student rep. I'm also in 12 clubs and am the vice president and president of a few, which sounds like a lot, but they're all so fun that it's well worth it. I'm also on the Parrington Dollars for Scholars board, and that's taught me a lot about how much work goes into every detail of helping our students succeed. Outside of academics, I play on the varsity girls soccer team, and I'll let you know when we win sectionals. That's me, and now to the interesting stuff. In the past 2 months at Fairport, there's been so much happening. As everyone was adjusting to getting up early again, sitting at a desk all day, and seniors were getting used to their newfound freedoms, senior privileges, the return to school went smoothly. We started off by having individual class meetings between each class and the administrators. I got to be at every meeting, and every class shows so much promise for this year. We also reiterated the 3 R's, respectful, responsible, and resilient, during our English classes, as a good reminder to students that school isn't just about learning educational facts, but also learning to be a good human being. We also had our annual Sources of Strength field trip to Minerva to learn about how to be peer leaders and better the school community. We had our club fair, which allowed all students to check out all the amazing clubs Fairport has to offer and give the opportunity for more people to get involved. Robotics Club got to show off 3 of their high-tech robots. Drama Club advertised their upcoming musical, Alice in Wonderland, and Malta United Nation explained their conferences and performed a mock speech. And 2 weeks ago, I, along with many other seniors, got to travel to Washington, D.C. for our leadership trip. This was a 3-day trip. We began by stopping in Annapolis, Maryland, where we were all allowed to wander around and explore. We then finished the drive to Washington and got some sleep before we woke up bright and early to go to our Thursday meetings. I was in the Mexican drug cartels group, so I had the privilege of meeting with the DEA and OFAC and the FBI on my first day, where we learned a lot of valuable information that helped further our research. After those meetings, we were given some time to explore the Smithsonian museums, which were fascinating, and then we all went down to Georgetown University and got to walk around the entire college town. Then we woke up bright and early again on Friday morning, and each group had approximately 3 to 5 meetings that day. These meetings were either in the White House or on Capitol Hill, and it was a great experience for everyone. We are so grateful for this opportunity, and a special thanks to Mr. Malaber, Mr. Sachs, and all the chaperones who made it possible. Later on in October, we had homecoming. Students only had a 4-day week of school, which was great, and every day there was a new spirit theme and activities to do. There was even a class competition to see which class could decorate their assigned hallway the best. Juniors won that one. But then at the end of the day on Thursday, we had our school pep rally that was filled with excited competition. Each grade competed against each other through games such as musical chairs and tug of war. In case you all were wondering, the class of 2024 won for the 2nd year in a row. Then to kick off homecoming, we had our combined induction of the Alumni Wall of Fame, Student Wall of Fame, and Staff Wall of Distinction on October 5th. I got to induct Mr. William Dancy into the Alumni Wall of Fame, and 7 other students participated in inducting other staff and alumni. This was a great experience for all who attended and inspired many. We then had our community pep rally, starting with boys soccer playing on the main turf, and the kids zone was set up and run by our varsity club, which was a huge success. Then all of our fall varsity sport athletes got to run onto the fields, and a few awards were given out, and the night ended with a bonfire. Moving on, last week was safety week, and while it may have been a little chilly outside for the fire drills, all drills practice taught students how to effectively handle emergency situations. We practiced early dismissal, fire drills, lockdown, and hold-in-place drills. Coming up in November, we have the completion of the first quarter of the school year, our annual Dollars for Scholars Phone-a-thon, and our senior trip to Boston, all of which I'm looking forward to sharing the details with you all. Thank you.
Claire, I'm not letting you off the hook. I mean, the best part, every time you see her, she will give you a riddle. You know, I know it's
The
a lot
jokes,
of
yes.
yes, a joke. Mr. Clark can vouch for that as well, right?
Yes. So
Oh, next time. Right,
next
this
time.
this group can handle it.
Okay.
All right.
You guys can guess the answer. Thank you.
Clara, I think this was also, your leadership group was the group that missed your 8th grade trip to Washington.
Yeah, they
correct?
are.
So I'm sure that was even special for you to be able to get to Washington.
Yes, it was great.
Okay, so next up, I get to do my report, and I will try to keep it short and sweet. First of all, I did want to thank the Fairport community for voting yes on both Proposition 1 and 2 last Thursday. So, yay. We had over 3,800 folks come out to vote last week, which was significantly higher than what we had in December. So, thank you for your getting out there and getting to vote. Proposition 1 passed with 73% of the vote, and Proposition 2 passed with 57% of the vote. We are looking forward to continued planning and construction to improve the learning environment for our students. So I know Jan mentioned that it does take time. I'm sure we will continue to have updates for the community on, what is happening in terms of planning, but we have students here, we have staff here, we have people here working all the time, so we do have to squeeze in as much as we can when folks are on vacation or after school. So we'll keep you updated. Personally, I did want to thank Lindsay Reddig and team on their marketing efforts related to the capital improvement vote. Not only did the amount of information shared with the community increase with this project, but the ways the information was disseminated increased. I would also like to thank Sarah Driscoll for coordinating everything that goes into holding a capital improvement vote. We will continue, as I said before, to share information and collect feedback related to the Fairport for the Future project. I did mention earlier we had our workshop, and we were talking about our budget goals for the 2023-24 school year. So we will be talking through that a little bit later if you stick around for the discussion. If not, you can always watch it from home because we're live streaming. And finally, I know Brett touched on this when we kicked off the meeting, but I did want to just recognize that many students and families, staff members, neighbors, friends, and just people in our community are feeling the impact of the situation in the Middle East. The board has received many emails with a variety of viewpoints. Personally, over the years, I've taught, worked, developed friendships, and trained people from different religious and political backgrounds. As a district, our job is to be here to support and love our students. I know that resources and information has been shared with families, but please reach out to your school teachers, staff, administrators if you have questions or need more support for your family at home. So I'm done.
Thanks, Erica.
And next up, we have Superintendent Provenzano.
I say it frequently. I have the pleasure of sitting back at different places, and whether it's homecoming, the pep rally, the wall of distinction, the wall of fame, student wall of fame, all the special activities that are occurring. It's about people. And most recently, I think about the essential educators. The essential educators, for example, the night of the pep rally, there was 12 to 15 of our centuries who were there for one job, one purpose, was just to keep us moving forward safely and productively, and the intention in their eyes, and they huddled up, right? And then you looked over to the right and you see the transportation center in full swing, nicely organized, trying to get people to and from the event, and the amazing community kept coming. And it was just a wonderful, we were wondering if it was going to rain, and it didn't rain. That's Raider luck. We were blessed, yes. And then you go to the special ceremonies, and there's Christine Lauber and her team, who Christine's here all the time, really making sure that people are nourished, and that goes on during the day, that goes on beyond the school day. Oh, and then after that pep rally, the night's over? No, all right, because I was fortunate enough to, don't ask me, but I was up at 7 o'clock the next morning, right? And guess who's there? The B and G, right? working around the clock.
Buildings and grounds.
Buildings and grounds, absolutely. And on top of that, the athletic department's there coning off the site, making sure that it's ready for the next event. I can go on and on. It's an amazing community. Lots of reasons why we are Raiders, and that's the purpose of this video that we're going to share.
I am a hard worker because I like to do multiple clubs. I'm class treasurer. I'm in drama club. And I'm a Raider. So when we say once a Raider, always a Raider, that's a conscious choice you make. A conscious choice you make to give of yourself so that you can be there for other people. And that's what we're asking you to do here, is to identify what it is about you that makes you special or that you want people to know. I want to showcase that I'm living with a chronic illness and I can still do all the things that an able-bodied person is able to do. I'm very proud father of two boys, one graduated from Fairport and the other one's a junior. I'm a positive person, I'm athletic. I'm a lifelong learner. I am a good gamer. I'm a Marine. I'm a Navy dad. I'm respectful. I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm a grill master. I'm a watcher of Real Housewives. All of them. I'm a plant lover. I am smart. Säger Chris Bethman Jungas I Ganyangehan. My name is Chris Bethman. I'm a new teacher here at Fairport. I am Indigenous. I'm a photographer. I'm a volleyball player. I'm a mother of 3. I am a sister to my exchange student. I'm passionate. I'm an avid kayaker. I am one of our GSA advisors, which is our Gender and Sexuality Alliance Club. I am really passionate for cosmetology, so I wrote I'm a future cosmetologist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm outgoing. I'm a leader, and I'm a Raider. And I'm a Raider. I'm a Raider. I'm a Raider. I'm a Raider. And I'm a Raider. I'm a Raider. And I'm a Raider. I am a Raider.
Thank you to Kelly and Lindsay, dynamic duo of making the spirit of Fairport come to life. Speaking about coming to life and Raiders through and through is our Board of Education. I believe, I think one of our community commentators spoke to its board recognition month. If we want to move this forward. Yep. See, it does happen to them too. See, they have it. Yeah. So it's School Board Recognition Week. 2 of our school board members are not here, right? If we were here, we'd be celebrating and acknowledging all the great things that they do. We're looking forward to doing that next month when we hopefully will have our board in place. But thank you for all that you do, and we'll look forward to celebrating it next month. Speaking about instilling values that go beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? We believe in service. We believe in contributing to a greater cause. The Fall Crawl, that's a K through 5th grade endeavor. All of our elementary schools engage in the Fall Crawl. It's a week of activities. It's lots of fundraising. Average about $8 to $9, sometimes $10,000 a year over the past several years. I think over the past 8 years we have about $65,000 that we've given to the Galasanos Children's Hospital, and that's what the week is about, and that's what all of our elementary schools speak to our children about throughout the week, and that's happening next week. Red Ribbon Week, that's the 10th. The 16th to the 20th is the Fall Crawl. And then Red Ribbon Week is the 23rd to the 27th. Again, lots of activity, lots of spirit days, talking about making healthy life choices, right? Trying to make sure that our students have resources that help them be the best version of themselves and do it in a way that is drug-free and forming life habits. This is part of our school. This is part of our priority. These are just not addendums. These are front and center. So when we talk about what is important to Fairport, yes, lots of serious things are happening in the classroom. Lots of reading and writing, making sure that our kids are critical thinkers. But we're also talking about service and contributing not only to Fairport, but to the greater world. And I think our community recognizes the importance of what we need to do to make sure that our students have the very best, to make sure that the learning environments are conducive to learning, caring, collaboration, sharing, problem solving. Proposition 1, 73% of our voters said that they approved Proposition 1. We had close to 3,800 people come out. Proposition 2, which solely focused on a track, there was 57% of our community said yes to Proposition 2. So facilities planning has been a priority. It's been since I've been superintendent. We've been able to get a pulse from our community. The expectations, I'm looking out there, some of you are on district advisory committees that spoke to the community's expectations for our schools. I'm proud of the fact that this continues to move forward, phase 2. And we'll be talking more about that in the future. But part of that vote, we learned that people were saying, Proposition 2, yep, education is important, right? Children are our future, right? There was lots of things on the thought exchange, but we took the highest ratings, 4.0 and higher. And people were saying they care about our schools. The future of Fairport and Perrington, a weak school district or school system, will negatively affect all of our residents. Again, there's value in our schools. We need to continually provide students with spaces and opportunities so they could be the best version of themselves and flourish. People look at our buildings. Some of these spaces are the same spaces that grandparents, parents went to when the school was first built. So we need to do better with our facilities, and people see it as an investment, as I already said. I'm going to lend this part, and I'll conclude my report, but I'm going to hand this over to Matt Stevens, who's going to talk a little about the project timeline. We're going to dig into it now, but this is just a cursory view, so we can start putting it in people's minds what the time frame that we're working under. Mr. Stevens.
Great, thank you. So up on the screen, I think there's a second part to this as well, if you want to throw that. Perfect, thank you. So when we talk about the capital project, the timeline you can see on the screen, in 2023, October 12th, we had the vote. Both Proposition 1 and 2 passed, as Mr. Provenzano mentioned, and now we move into the design phase of the project. So we start before project is put to voters with a concept and a conceptual design. Now it gets into the real details, and we work with user groups, our architects, construction management team, reach out to the users of the different spaces. We go through that design phase, and that takes time. The documents are being drawn before they get submitted to the State Education Department. Upon submission to the State Education Department in 2024, and then once approved, we can bid the project. See that towards the end of 24, early 25. Once the project is bid, and we can award bids, recommend bid awards to the Board of Education, develop contracts, and then we move through the construction phase of the project, which really spans 2025 through 2027. Kind of getting a little deeper into the construction phase on the bottom. You can see some of the pieces starting first, our tech edition, moving the tennis courts, creating parking in the area where the current tennis courts are, building the 7 tennis courts versus the 5 that we currently have, and the library reconstruction within Fairport High School taking place. And then down at the bottom, you see the track construction then begins in 2025 as well, which will result in no track facility in the 26 season. It's a long length of time to do that work. We saw that with the multi-use turf field that went in for baseball and softball, right, in terms of the timing that those fields were down. Similar would be with the track itself. Then construction through 26, with the timing of moving 9th graders from Minerva to Land into Fairport High School in September of 2026. Still will be work taking place, other work that didn't have to be done to make that move over. There's additional work in construction taking place through 2027, and then project closeout towards the end of 2027. As Mr. Belair mentioned earlier from campus, right, it's about a 4 or 5 year process when we talk about capital improvement projects, and then we can submit our final cost report. So that's just a brief summary of the next phase following the voter approval of the 2 propositions.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens, and thank you, board.
And you're good? Okay. So now we have a few minutes for the board members to report out on committees that we serve on. So does anyone want to kick us off?
Of course.
I'm looking at Brian.
It's always me.
I don't know why.
It's always me.
Go ahead.
So just as a quick report, we, Mary Caitlin and I were at the most recent Monroe County School Board Association, the Legislative Committee, and we're finalizing our position papers, which are the papers that we kind of guide our advocacy efforts when we meet with legislators, when we talk to them at various events. So we're updating some of them, and we're going to be writing new papers for 3 new papers, one on the minimum wage raising increases that are happening and its effect on schools, one on in favor of universal school meals. And there is a third one, which I'm blanking on. I don't remember if you remember what our third one is. Sorry to put you on the spot. But we're going to be voting on those as a Monroe County committee on November 1st. And then this is part of, again, our advocacy where we meet with our lawmakers in December. Then we go to Albany and we have our legislative breakfast with them. So just all part of that.
Thank you.
I can report out on Info Exchange. So this past week, Brett and Tanya and I took part in the committee where we learned from Gates Chili about their transition to a zero-emission bus fleet. As most are aware, this might be news to Brian, but we have a directive from New York State. I had to do that. What? Sorry, I had to. We have a directive to move to electric busing, but we want to balance that with an understanding that this is an evolving process, and as Gates Chili was clear on, it's ever evolving with ever evolving, improving technology. And they said if they knew what was here, it's one of those things that's ever evolving, and we're learning more. So this is certainly a journey and not a sprint. A lot of information's coming out. We're studying it thoughtfully. I know Brett is doing a lot of connection with our legislators. And we're learning forward next week at the NYSBA conference. A lot of sessions will be on electric busing that I'm sure we'll all be attending, as many as possible, taking the good nuggets of information and planning forward. So yeah, that's it.
Perhaps that gives me an easy follow-up to the NYSBA's business meeting, which occurred yesterday from 4 p.m. to 11:50 p.m. It was one long meeting. We discussed and debated, I think, 56 total resolutions that possibly could be adopted. The body adopted 35. So I'll spend the next hour going through each of those. No, but there were 3 that I like to highlight, I think, that were of interest to the board. They've been mentioned already in terms of what's being done by MCSBA, right, the Monroe County.
I was going to say, in New York State School Board Association
Right.
is what Peter's talking about, and
Yes. So, and that association, for anybody who might be listening, represents the school districts who decide to join to be members of that, which is the vast majority of districts in New York. And then they have an annual business meeting. It requires 200 representatives, one from each board. I was a representative for Fairport, right? Yes. And so stayed up for all 8 hours till midnight. But the ones that I know of interest here, one was universal free meals that was adopted as a resolution by NYSBA. So we'll have the position paper at the local county level, but also now that will be an advocacy effort by NYSBA on behalf of all school districts in New York. That passed with 77% of the delegates. The e-bus, it was much more challenging, electric buses requirements. We've done our own study already. There is concern that based on current technology, right, if we send, I followed a son out to Buffalo, that the battery life does not allow them to get to Buffalo and back. There has to be charging. Are there enough charging for all the buses coming in for various things? But that doesn't matter. Then you add winter on top of that and the cold air and the heat, and it really diminishes. And the rural districts pushed hard to say, you think that's a challenge in your urban areas? Think of those with huge, right, areas. So that they asked that we have NYSBA represent all districts and remove that mandate in at least a time frame, and that passed with 81%. Oh, wow. So I was surprised. I think overall, right, people are in favor. I think they spoke in favor, but in terms of the technology, there's a lot of, I don't know if the word is fear overall, that we're just not ready for that, that we will strand too many people somewhere or another, not people, just people, but children, specifically children.
And
heating,
especially within the time frame that the state is trying to
the
push
time
for.
frame's very tight. So that's what's the big concern is. We adopted a resolution then that the state study that, right? And let's get more information on the technology, the growth of technology, sustainability of all these things. So those were adopted at high rates. The other one that I think there was some degree was also cellular and Wi-Fi access. This has become more of an infrastructure, right? We generally think of infrastructure as roads, water, sewer, it used to be telephone lines or whatever, those things that were utilities. But now, because of the amount of work that is done, not just work, but also homework and access to the internet for students, it was to push that there be access. There was some confusion early on, even with me, right? And we debated that this was not paying for plans for every family in rural areas, but making sure that the lines, the whatever, the access extends. And so that was the closest vote I'd ever seen in I think the 8 years now I've been representing board. It was a vote of 149 to 147, so it passed. Had I voted where I initially vote, you can see that would have flipped it from 149 to 148 versus 148. All right, so democracy matters. Wanted to use that for both that people showing up and voting. It was very close, but it was passed, and NISBA will represent us as a district advocating for that type of legislation. There are others. You should get the email about all 35 that were adopted.
Oh. Did you say that was the most you've ever seen adopted too?
The most we've ever seen adopted, the most we've ever seen debated. It's why it represented 8 hours of going through one by one, allowing 10 minutes of debate on each one. It was a long.
And how much do you make hourly for being on that for us?
Do you want to know how many Mounds bars I ate yesterday? That was my pay, sorry.
we owe you a large bag of those for this.
No. I had enough.
Now you're on to Mountain Dew.
Right, yes, that's what's keeping me awake today.
Thank you, Peter.
Do you have any more?
No,
Oh, okay. Sustainability real quick. We are still working to support our school-wide green teams. We're organizing in building trick or trash. So if you don't know, candy wrappers and chip bags and all that kind of like crinkly stuff can be recycled, but it has to go to specialty recyclings. So we're going to have boxes in each of the schools for a month. So as your family eats them, they can drop them in those boxes and they'll go to a specialty recycling. So families will get information about that. And then also we have one student on our sustainability committee who is just very strongly advocating that instead of families buying the expensive calculators, we have school sets. So just like our students each get the Chromebook, they would get the T80, 97, whatever calculator we're at now. If you're in a course that requires that, along with your Chromebook at the start of the year, you would also get a calculator. And then it would help families, it would help the district. Yeah, so our students, and the student was really motivated because at the end of the last year's locker clean out, he saw kids just toss them in the garbage.
Oh.
Yeah. And so he's going around and pulling them so they can donate to other kids. But I just love that. So I think that will be coming, Mr. Devitt, Superintendent Provenzano. This student is on a mission, so we're going to support him in that advocacy. So, yeah. Oh, and then we had school improvement team, which is a huge district-wide committee, and Tanya's not here, but there's a lot of us on it. And we are diving into the topic of grades this year. And really what it came to is a conversation of what are grades? Are grades a measure of learning? Are grades a measure of compliance? Like if I get my kid's report card home and it says 85, does that mean my kid knows 85% of the material? Or did my kid, are they really good at participating? Did they participate 85% of the time, but they might not know the material? Or did they do 85% of the homework? What does that number actually tell anyone? So we're kind of diving into that to say, if I take English with Dr. Moritz or I take English with Dr. White, is my 85 the same as your 85? And can we have that conversation?
I'm a way easier grader than you are. I think we all know that one.
So it's a year-long conversation. It's going to be a lot of work and a lot of depth. So it's exciting.
And I just wanted to mention, Nicole and I are part of the Wellness Committee, which is actually mandated by the state as well. So we met this past month, and there's going to be some opportunities for families, parents, friends to come for some learning opportunities. So more to come, but it was a fun meeting as well. Are we good? Okay. Gonna move on to the treasurer and investment update.
Okay, thank you and good evening. Tonight we have 3 months worth of reports, as we work to close year end, and then July and August. So I'm going to start with June. In the beginning of June, we had a beginning general fund cash balance of $79 million, receipts during the month of $7.3 million, disbursements of $25 million for an ending general fund cash balance of $61.2 million. About 96% of such funds were invested in a mix of money market, insured cash sweep accounts. If you just kind of quick highlight here, revenues and expenses, comparative year to year, revenues higher. A couple key categories in terms of revenues when we look at year over year. Property tax piece, the increase in the tax levy creates additional revenue there. State aid increases we received, and interest earnings. Those are kind of 3 of the main pieces of year-over-year increases in revenue that we saw as a district. And just wanted to kind of draw a couple notes within the revenues, within the $7.3 million. A couple big pieces related to BOCES aid and state aid. So BOCES aid, you see our first large payment of BOCES aid there. That is the first payment of our 2022-23 aid. We don't receive the balance of the 22-23 aid in cash actually until September timeframe. So that's a revenue that has to be accrued for us from year to year. And then the state aid, and then due from other funds, about $2.4 million coming back from other funds. We have to lend funds to federal special aid fund to prepay for salaries and those different pieces funded through the grants, because those are on a reimbursement basis until we get the money back from the state. For the expenses we have, those are being funded by the general fund. So there's kind of a couple of key pieces you see there coming back through. So that's the month of June of 23. Now jumping into July, beginning cash balance in the general fund of $61.2 million, receipts of 1.8, and disbursements of 4.8 for an ending cash balance of 58.1. Revenues and expense revenues just about 1.3 million, primarily related to interfund transfer for payment of debt service that we had in July. So that's money coming in from the debt service fund and then our expenses. During the summer months, you'll see our expenses exceeding our revenues. Our large revenues start coming in during the September-October timeframe when we start to receive the real property tax funding. Now moving on to August, beginning cash balance of 58.1, receipts of 3.3 million, and disbursements of 5.5 million for an ending cash balance of 56 million, of which about 99% of those invested in that money market insured cash sweep accounts as well there. And again, revenues consistent, expenses consistent, and lining up with previous years in terms of the timing of those different pieces. So that's a summary for June, July, and August. It's nice. You can actually see how the match up for the year end to the beginning. This is when we can see if there's any typos in the work as we move the numbers. So it's nice to see it line up, as we have those month-to-month reports.
Spoken like a true business official.
Thank you.
Thank you to you and your team to organizing that. It's a great effort. Lots of success. Appreciate it.
And if people are looking for that information, it is on our consent calendar. Okay. We are going to move on to the consent calendar. And just so folks know, these are items that we have looked at individually and as a board, and we approve these with one vote. So I need a motion to approve the consent calendar. Brian?
Second.
Jan? All in favor? Aye. So 5-0. Which brings us to board discussion and action items. And first on here is the budget calendar. I need a motion that the Board of Education accepts the 2024-25 budget calendar as attached. Mary Caitlin?
Second.
Peter? All in favor? Aye. 5-0. And because this is a discussion area as well, before we go ahead and approve this, the next one is budget goals for 2024-25. And I think I mentioned before that we talked about this earlier at the workshop, but I'm just gonna, it's on there, open it up. Go ahead. Yep. So I need a, no, go ahead. So I need a motion. Brian, Mary Caitlin, and then discussion. Yeah.
Could also refer people back to the workshop. I think it will be available, right, where we discussed these in more detail. Audit and Finance had met twice to try and generate the basics, and then they were definitely influenced by the workshop topic and revised to what's presented here today. But I just want to point out for Matt's team, right, it never sleeps, right? The budget cycle. I mean, we're in October. We've been talking about already for several weeks, and we'll be doing it again. So thanks for all the work. But the message we hope will go out on the 3rd, right? The budget message, I mean, as part of the calendar, and so we're looking to adopt these. I suppose any changes of minds from our workshop. I love what.
I love them. I love the emphasis on programming and as that first goal. Investing in our teachers, investing in our students, investing in UPK, and all of that. Keeping our maths team, keeping our financials solid as they are, and then the facilities update at the bottom, which we watched workshop. We talked a lot about, but keeping our schools modern, both preparing for a larger capital campaign down the road while also doing our best within the budget to show the buildings and facilities and learning environments that need them love.
Right. We want to make sure we're maintaining what we have
Yes.
improved upon so that we don't run into a situation where we have to do a lot all at once. Brett, were you going to comment?
These goals will help us create the story, the narrative that speaks to our priorities. I appreciate the board getting on them early, and we'll be able to build upon that and present a budget that aligns with these expectations. The clarity is just remarkable and greatly appreciated.
Any other thoughts, comments?
I just like to add for the 3rd one, if I guess just from what we said earlier, you've all been in the district a while, right? I've been on the board a while. And facilities has just been a challenge of sorts, and look forward to getting through the major capital, but really that transitioning so that we hopefully avoid those types of major, huge capital projects. How do we keep our buildings fresh? I don't think until even the last couple of years, I really appreciated how much B&G, Buildings and Grounds, really do, but coming back out of COVID to see the use of these buildings, one brings a smile to my face, but I'm just amazed they're constantly in use. Constantly in use from early in the morning, unlocking doors at 6 a.m. to late at night when buses get back, and kids pile out and run into the building to pick up other things. These things are constantly in use. And so to maintain them means don't go build and then wait 20 years, right? Or 30 years or 50 years. It's come up with these smaller projects along the way. So I'm really happy we're adopting that. I imagine it could be for multiple years until we indeed feel comfortable that we're in a smaller capital projects process and
rotation.
flow.
Yeah.
So thanks for that influence on that budget goal.
Okay. So let's see here. We are
gonna vote.
Nope, I know my screen moved. So we all in favor? Aye. So 5-0. I had to refresh my screen. Okay, so next up we have field trip requests, and there are quite a few, which
There's
is
many.
exciting. So I need a motion to approve field trip request as attached.
So moved.
Peter,
A second.
Jan, any discussion? I think we mentioned at the last meeting that we're hoping to get back into kind of a process where our classroom teachers and staff are submitting their information for field trip approval a little earlier than later, and it looks like
That's the goal.
That's the goal, but
That's
it
the
looks
goal.
like we got a lot.
There will be anomalies throughout the year, and I
Mhm.
appreciate you know
Yeah.
giving me some flexibility to get that to the board and letting them know beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. So we appreciate that these were done in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Are we good?
Just a shout out and thanks to our 8th grade chaperones from the 8th grade trip, keeping our kiddos safe, making a hard decision, but keeping our kids at the forefront of their minds. So thanks.
And heck of a pivot to a chocolate factory. And it's
Heck of a
that was
pivot.
pretty good.
Middle
Yeah.
school, it's not a far reach. It's not a far reach. That would work.
They went to Hershey Park.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Which brings us to policy first reads. And I need a motion that the Board of Education approves the first reading of the following policies: 4230, 5310, 5322, 5340, 6110, 8330.
And add in 7315, 7316, 7317. They got added. They're in the content, but they
Yes,
didn't
you're right.
on the line of the motion.
Okay, so 7315, 7316, 7317,
And the forward.
and the forward. Brian,
Second.
Mary Caitlin, and discussion?
Just one quick thing you'll see in public comment 5321. We had taken that one out. It hadn't gone through policy yet, but I don't think there'll be a lot of changes, but that's not on the motion for tonight. So just ignore that
Did you
PDF.
say 5321?
5321. Yep.
The credit card.
Yeah. That one that's going to policy on Friday. Yes. And then so you'll see the big exciting change for this month was 7315, the acceptable use policy. We condensed 7316 and 7317 into 72315 and updated 7315 to more modern times. It had some language in there from
The early days of the internet.
yeah.
I think
older
both.
internet days.
Like
Yeah.
floppy disk.
Yeah.
Both the student use of social networking and the student use of computerized information, needed some help.
It needed some love. So they're all freshened up. They align with our code of conduct now. So yeah.
And the forward is being added. So if folks are looking, I think some of the definitions are helpful if people are confused when you're
and-
reading through all our policies.
The core beliefs and the equity core beliefs, those were all approved back in March by the board. So now we've condensed it into one nice place, and it'll always just be in the beginning of our policy section. And that's all I got to say about that.
I suppose it's minor, but it just seems a little, I don't know, just a little annoyance in my side right district cell phones. I don't know how many we have. It seems kind of petty to worry about charging an employee for nominal personal use of a cell phone. I don't know, it's just a feeling not absorbed by not shared by
I think
anybody else. It's just-
I don't know how it is done in practice, but I think it's there in the instance that there was a large fee. On cell phones, letter B, in order to assure reasonable remuneration.
If you can
for
ever say
any-
that word right, I'm happy. 'Cause I
remuneration
can't.
for any personal use of district cell phone, regardless of additional itemized charges.
Employees issued such phones will be charged a nominal monthly fee as determined by the superintendent for anticipated personal use.
So
Yeah, so anybody that has a district issued cell phone, there is a portion that will come out of their check just for that. It's a standard fee for anybody that has it. I believe it's $15 a month, just for that.
that's a
any
district
personal
cell
use.
phone.
That's-
It's not.
That's
I
if
don't
it's a
understand
district.
applied. It just seems petty. I was like, why are we worrying about that? In modern times, you talked about updating. It's just cell phones are what they are.
Well, there's choices. There's different ways you don't need a district issued phone. You can have your own phone.
That's why I think, why are we worrying about it? I
Yeah.
just personally, I just say remove it. So you got a district issued cell phone and you use it for some personal use along those lines. It's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, we have to have some portion of it coming out just because it's a natural use. If they're using it for personal use, we have to reflect that.
Auditor would have.
So
that
that's an
probably, right?
audit
Yeah.
from an audit perspective.
Yep.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I can't stick with my word. It seems petty, but that's okay. I understand.
Thanks for understanding.
Didn't expect to win anything here, so.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm
Aye.
not having it pulled out.
You can talk to the auditors. What? I think it was Mary Caitlin and Jan. Okay. And which moves us to personnel. And first up, we have instructional, and if you're viewing from home, I believe it's on your screen, or you can look at our board docs. But I need a motion to approve the following instructional staff actions as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
So moved.
Peter. Mary Caitlin. Any discussion? I know we've looked at this. All in favor? Aye. 5-0. And next up, we have non-instructional. And okay. I need a motion. Sorry, I need a motion to approve non-instructional appointments and civil service. Brian is up.
So moved.
Brian and
Second.
Jan.
I think I realized, like, with two less people, like, we gotta get in there. Yeah.
I know. Any discussion?
I know this isn't for me to discuss, but I think it's worth pointing out that there are some retirements on here.
I was gonna,
yeah.
for the instructional one.
It's for the
there was.
non-instructional.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and these are individuals who they're working in our kitchens. They're on the transportation in the transportation center, doing important work with our children. They're one-to-one aides, and they're going to be missed as the retirement date nears. Exciting for them, but it's a loss to our Fairport family. I know.
And it does look like some are later in the year, so that's nice.
Yep.
But you're right, it does look like a few are in December, so
yep.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. 5-0. And we're at athletics. I need a motion to approve the following athletic staff actions as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
So moved.
Peter? Brian? Any discussion? I will just say most of these are for winter season sports.
Which is crazy to think.
It is.
We are approaching that.
Yep, exactly. All in favor? Aye. So 5-0. And then we have a memorandum of agreement, and I need a motion to approve the following memorandum of agreement as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
So moved.
Peter?
Second.
Jan? This was just a teacher that is covering. So we do this.
An extended
Yeah,
workload, yep.
extended birthday. Yep. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Which leads us to our executive session. I am, before we sign off from our live stream and say goodbye to our two guests that have stayed with us throughout, we are going to go into executive session. We'll reconvene into an open session just to adjourn, so there will not be any more information voted on or discussed after we reconvene to just adjourn. So thanks for being with us, and we will see you next month.
Great. Thank you.